Hello, everyone, and welcome to this installment of Data Science Simplified. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Scott Taylor. Scott Taylor is a data whisperer. He has helped countless companies by enlightening business executives to the strategic value of proper data management. He focuses on business alignment and the strategic why rather than the system implementation and the technical how. As principal consultant of Meta Consulting, he helps enterprise and tech brands tell their story. He lives in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where he often kayaks with BlackRock Harbor, in Harbor. He can also juggle pins and blow a square bubble. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, Meiji. How are you? Nice to see you. I'm not going to do either of those last two things.
So we're very excited to talk about your new book about data storytelling. So first of all, congratulations on the book that was just published this November, telling your story, telling your data storytelling for data management. Right away, just from the marketing materials that I've glossed through, it is clear that you want this topic to be accessible to everyone. It's 99% buzzword free. Can you frame this as the hottest non-technical trend in technology-related space? Why don't you start by telling us a little about the intended reader and who should read it, the book, and why?
Perfect. Yeah. So got a copy here. Here you go. Here's my copy. Telling your data story, data storytelling for data management, as you mentioned, 99% buzzword free. That's my guarantee. But I felt like, as you suggested, data storytelling is probably the hottest non-technical thing going on in the space. And I looked at it and I was listening, and it was all about data visualization, analytics, business intelligence. And I come from the data management side of the space: master data, reference data, metadata, MDM, RDM, PIM, that whole kind of management side first. And I was listening for the voice of data management in data storytelling, and I didn't hear it.
Right.
And I thought, and the more I delved into it, it was about visualization. It was about using the right kind of graphics. It was about putting analytics in a business context. These are all super important things. Those are all things that I categorize as deriving meaning from data.
Right.
But you've got to determine the truth first. And data management is about determining the truth. Hence the meaning of my truth hat. It's all about my own personal brand here. Let's get the truth first before you derive meaning. It has to go in that order. It's not chicken or egg here. It is egg and omelet. Truth first and then meaning with data. Garbage in, garbage out, rubbish in, rubbish out, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So I felt like there was a space for data practitioners, data managers, data science experts to be able to understand and articulate the value of the data management part of that exercise in a way that complemented the data storytelling on the analytics side. So there's about 30 books out there about data storytelling on analytics. There were 0 about data management, so I thought I'd jump into that niche. But my target audience are primarily the data practitioners who struggle to reinforce the strategic value of proper data management to their business leaders, to their enterprise stakeholders. They want to get engagement. They want to get funding. They want to get support. But also I felt there was a adjunctive audience in the data science community who struggle a lot to understand where their value fits. And I hear a lot of data science folks out there talk about, okay, we've got these wonderful techniques, but how do I really put it into play? How do I make sure that my business gets value out of the activity I am focusing on? And there are a number of exercises in the book to help people understand, okay, what does your business do? Start there. What does your business do? And why is what they do important? And then how do you tie data to that?
So I want to delve further into the idea of the truth around data, but let's table that for now. You have a chapter on building your data story, where you talk about aligning data management with strategic intentions of an enterprise, right? Why don't you walk us through the process? What are the first steps?
The first step is to understand those strategic intentions. So, what's the strategy of your company? Where's your company trying to go? Why does it really exist? It gets to really, not to get too highfalutin here, but sort of the existential nature of the business and the enterprise that you represent. And if you boil it all down, every enterprise out there, every business out there is trying to deliver value to their relationships through their brands at scale.
Yes.
That's the statement that I put out there to say, tell me a company that isn't trying to do that. Now, businesses do produce value and provide value to their relationships through their brands. That's the essence of business. People have been doing that forever. You could do it at scale if you hire lots and lots of people. But today, when you think about something like digital transformation is truly using technology to bring that value to your relationships. And that is what enables the scale aspect of it. Scale takes technology. Technology is hardware, software, data. Data, as a vital part of it, needs data management. You can't do anything with data unless it's managed correctly. So that was kind of my logic through there. But what you fill in the blanks. So who are your relationships? What kind of relationships do you have? Which relationships do you want to focus on? Customer, vendor, partner, prospect? Are they consumers? Are they citizens? Are they patients? These very classic master data domains, entity types, and so on that a company deals with. And then what are your brands? Brands, products, services, offerings. Do you deliver tangible widgets? Do you provide value through an as a service digital offering? These are all the blanks that somebody needs to fill in to get more specific about how they do that. You can very quickly go from the idea of relationships and brands to the quality or the veracity, the truthiness of the data about those relationships and brands, and see where the challenges are to be able to enable that value, if you will. So again, starting with where is your company trying to go? What are their intentions? What is their strategy? It's not so much about the data in that exercise. It's about truly understanding the reason your business exists. Why does it exist?
Now, this draw synonymous, like equivalent lines for me as a data strategist or from a data scientist. The way we start with working on a project is always determined by what's the problem you're solving, right? Rather than what data you have.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm hearing from you, you're saying that's the same sort of aspect when it comes to data management and master data management. You want to first outline, basically give a layout of this sort of data interactions that we have and sort of data that we collect. What do I want to do? And then go and map that. Is that correct?
Yes. You start with the why. I always start with the why in my bio. As you mentioned, I'm the why, not the how. When you are trying to get business stakeholder engagement, when you're trying to get executive leadership to fund and support what you're doing, they don't care about the how unless they understand the why. And a lot of folks start with the how. We're going to use Python. We're going to SQL, all these other kind of techniques that people are very proud of and you need to have expertise in. Those don't have a lot of business leaders that I deal with don't have an interest in that. They have an interest in why does this matter? Why does this help our company? Why does this bring value?
Now, this is very important and very interesting that you're talking about this, because when you're talking about the why, especially to executives and senior executive leaders, it's usually tied to some tangible and quantified ROI. Now, is this something that's easy to map in data management?
The ROI is actually particularly difficult in data management because it's the kind of exercise that helps an entire company. So specific ROI tends to be focused on a project, on an ad hoc kind of exercise, on a campaign, when in fact, data management is foundational.
Right.
So for me, it's almost so what's the ROI on having lights on in our business? What's the ROI on having power to our computer? What's the ROI on having our technical infrastructure? These are hard things to calculate because they help an entire business. It's horizontal value. So while ROI is important and people need to put these business plans together, they need to show that if we do this investment, it will reap this kind of benefit. There is an element in there and that's what's so important about tying it to the strategic intentions of your enterprise. There's an element in there that's an enabling factor. So you can't always figure out, okay, if I didn't use that dollar, would it be used better elsewhere? It's an infrastructure play in a lot of cases. Those are very difficult to sell in,
Yeah.
which is why it needs to be exposed to the highest levels of the organization, because those are the folks who have that view across the entire enterprise and say, all right, we need to do this for the whole company.
Yeah. So really, what you describe in your book is a continuing disconnect between technology professionals and executive leaderships, and that's what I'm hearing as a strain throughout this conversation. In many ways, like data scientists are focused on the process and the materials, whether it's numerical input, methodologies for analysis, right? On the other side of the building, you have the leadership, which is focused much more on the business outcomes, right? And looking for ways that the data can influence decision making and workflow. So while there may be an argument that these professionals with different experience and perspectives contribute to that disconnect, you highlight a few moments in the book that come down to the language itself and narrative. Could you give us a few examples of this?
Language is important. I talk about what I call the 3 V's of data storytelling: vocabulary, voice, and vision. There's clearly a knowing wink to the 3 V's of big data.
Right.
But it starts with that vocabulary. It starts with the words we use are important. If you want to speak to the business, you have to use the language of the business. I see technical and data practitioners who have tremendous expertise start with a bunch of terminology that doesn't have any relevance to the business side.
Right.
And actually spend time trying to explain that terminology. So my background's in sales. I mean, even door-to-door selling I used to do. You don't have a lot of time. In that immediate first moment is as important as anything to establish that rapport. It's the time that people are paying the most attention to you. Mm-hmm. So even just from a clear exercise of communication, those first moments have to be spent with highlighting what the real challenge is, what the real point of what you're trying to explain is. And if you waste that time going through a bunch of vocabulary that the other side doesn't understand, you're losing a lot of opportunity. So that first step is, what is the language of your business? What's the terminology that you use? What's the vocabulary that the business already understands? Add your own nomenclature, terminology that's technical very sparingly at all, but talk in the language of the business. Don't expect the business to learn the technical language, because they won't.
Right. So that's really interesting and a very good point that you make. So language is certainly important. But when it comes to data and the world of data, you have data from different sources, right? Could be from accounting, from sales, communications, as well as other departments. And the majority of staff within those departments, the business folks, are going to speak in a language, right? That's certainly different from the data professionals, like you said. So very much more non-technical and much more business focused. But they're still tasked with gathering and sharing the same data regardless. So we return to some of your observations in telling your data story, where you can realize that even simple act of sharing information about customer reviews, but framed in a language that's relevant to the business folks you're talking to, it makes a big difference, right?
Yeah, make all the difference. Things like the word customer. An exercise early on in data management, data governance, is to establish a business glossary, which is the source of all the basic terminology for an enterprise. Define a customer. If sales has a different definition of customer than finance or operations, sometimes that's okay, as long as there's a ability to translate that and retranslate that. And what I mean by that is, sales might determine customer as that particular unit that they call on. Finance might look at customer as the place that they do billing. Operations is customers where they do where they ship. these things are connected. You've just got to straighten that out. It's not that everybody has to have exactly the same level that they work at. It's just a recognition that customer has a hierarchy. That hierarchy includes the different elements that the different parts of the organization call on.
Right.
When we talk to the CEO, our customer is the highest level. When we're talking shipping, it's the distribution locations. When we're talking sales, it might be the selling locations. But knowing that going up front and having a structure that enables people to aggregate and integrate all that activity in a consistent, common way, instead of arguing, the other side is, no, finance's view is the only view. Sales view is the only view. Everybody does want to see things one way, their way. So as a data manager in the middle, you've got to be able to accommodate that.
The classic example is regarding you're talking to sales department versus a marketing person, right? Obviously, for the sales department, a customer is someone that actually signs and starts an engagement or buys a solution from you guys. Whereas if you're talking to a marketing department, a client is someone that engages with marketing material.
Yeah, it could be at least knowing those definitions and then smoothing them out where those opportunities are. Does everybody need every 30 different definitions of customer? No, you're going to have trouble with that. But if we can look at the levels of customer within a standardized hierarchy and then have those levels named in some way that the organization all understands, that can help people realize, all right, when I say tomato, you mean tomato, but we're talking about the same thing.
Flatter. So the narrative and language vocabulary all matter a great deal. So my question is then, for someone that's not quite familiar with technology in general, so non-data scientist or non-tech person, can they become data whisperers or learn to acquire these skills that are necessary? And what strategies should they keep in mind if they're trying to become data whisperers?
So my sort of definition, tongue in cheek, of a data whisperer is to help calm data down. That's what all of us do in the data management space. We help calm data down. Probably tell already, I don't do a lot of personal whispering. I'm more save that for the data. But if your question is, how do people go from the business side to the data side? Is that more the essence of your question?
It is, yes.
I mean, that's a personal discussion. I think there's a level of data literacy, which is another hot topic out there, which I define as just simply understanding data that business people have to have if they're going to use it. So they shouldn't expect that everything is going to be served up to them in a way that they don't have to understand. If you want, the most successful business people that I know have already embraced data, already understand what it means. They may not need to have the practitioner expertise of creating that analytics or doing that data mastering, but they know what that data is. They can trust it. They somewhat understand the sourcing. And most importantly, they know how to apply it to a relationship. How do I apply this insight to help me do what I want to do at some form of scale? So it's important for that understanding of data to be permeated across an entire organization, just like their business people have to have some understanding of finance, some understanding of legal, some understanding of marketing. You're in different parts of the organization. You have to have some sense of what these different departments do, how they bring value. And the higher up you are in an organization, the more you're expected to have a wider view of what all these pieces are and how they all fit together.
You make a great point. And like you said, data literacy flows both ways, right? For the business side to understand some of the technical terms, as well as the technical terms to understand the business side and to be able to communicate in that manner.
And there could be something in this idea of business literacy. That's something that I would encourage. Didn't have that name yet for the when I was writing the book. It probably would have been a good term to throw in there, but that data people need to have the literacy of their business. And I've worked mostly at data companies.
Mm-hmm.
rather and sold to and engaged with a lot of these enterprises on manufacturing, finance, name a category. I've talked to all different kinds of companies. And I'm even surprised that some of the data companies I worked at, some of the folks on the more technical side, the lack of understanding they may have even had on why this data is important to the people who buy it.
Yeah.
They're really focused on kind of the execution of that process. I think that's good. You've got to start there. But if you want to grow in an organization, you've got to learn more about what your company does, why it's important to the people who pay your company to do things. So there's always, I tell my kids when they started at the companies that they started at and encouraged them to learn as much as they could about the businesses they were working for, and said it is impossible for you to know too much about your business. It's impossible.
Well,
So just keep learning.
right. Your book is written with a business context in mind, like you said, right, from a more of a business and strategy standpoint. But I'm wondering if this is an approach that can apply to individuals as well. Whenever you're in the job market, for example, some of the advice that you get is to create a brand for yourself, decide what overarching personal narrative you would use for your cover letter, resume, LinkedIn, and so forth. Couldn't a data narrative be about yourself or your contribution towards that as well?
I think there's some elements to that. I wouldn't suggest this book is a personal development volume that people, who are not involved in the data space, but there's certainly some hints in there. There's enough coverage in there about just doing presentations, about talking to senior leadership, about getting to the point. I have a very small section called a crash course in selling that I think everybody should have a sense of when they try to communicate to folks and make a point, drive an action, get a commitment. These are all basic fundamental things at the atomic level, are applicable to any type of situation. I didn't invent them. I'm just trying to articulate them for a group that may not have that experience. But there's application, I think, to a lot of different parts of life for sure. I'd love to think so.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I think that's what we have. So, Scott, where can someone find this book? I think I certainly need a copy myself to look through. If you're looking for it, or if any of the viewers is looking to find out more, where can they find the book?
Sure, they can find it on Amazon. There it is, Telling Your Data Story by Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer. It's on Amazon for sure, both the Kindle version and the hardcover. I'll tell you that through some quirk of Amazon AI-based categorization, I am ranking at 192 in performing arts, in the performing arts category. So I looked that up. I was such a, being a data guy, I go, okay, so if I look at that, if my book is ranking at 192 in performing arts, that makes me the #1 data book in performing arts. That's for sure.
I would imagine so. Yes, I would.
Yeah, it goes up and down. It's crazy, the rankings in Amazon. Also, directly from the publisher, Technics Publications, who've been great. They've been a great team to work with. But it's available where all fine books are sold through digital means, both Amazon and directly with the publisher. And you can find more about me on LinkedIn. I've got a pretty open page there. I produce a lot of videos. I've got a YouTube channel, which is easy to find as well. But I put out a lot of content and different types on LinkedIn, which has been my primary focus for distributing ideas and thoughts and rants and ravings and everything else I come up with.
All right. Well, that's it for Telling Stories with Data, folks. For more data science insights and future installments of Data Science Simplified, just subscribe to our YouTube channel, Data Products. You can also follow us on Facebook at Data Products LLC, or on Twitter at Data Products. See you next time. Bye-bye.